A roaring fire. It's one sure way of turning your house into a home. They all try to imitate it, but there's nothing to beat the real thing. It's enough to put a smile on anyone's face. But there's one sure way to wipe away that smile, and that's if the fire has been badly installed, because a bad installation job will lead to problems. And that's why I'm here, to show you how to eliminate those problems by demonstrating the correct way to install an open fire. In such a short space of time, it's impossible to cover every conceivable situation, but I'll go through the basic principles in this easy-to-follow, step-by-step guide. You start, of course, with a brick recess in the chimney breast. This is known as the builder's opening. Its size can vary, but it's usually 350 millimeters or 1.5 bricks deep, 600 millimeters or 2.5 bricks wide, and has a minimum height of 600 millimeters. It may be that the builder's opening is much larger, for instance, if a cooking range has previously been fitted. In that case, you must reduce the opening by building walls at each side and to the rear, remembering, of course, to prevent rising damp by first laying a concrete base and damp-proof course. Normally, 1 brick thickness is enough, with the void filled with dry rubble to prevent a cavity forming. Right, before we get to work, 2 further checks are necessary. First, make sure the flue in the chimney is swept, is clear of obstruction, and is in good condition. It should be at least 185 millimeters in diameter, though the building regulations for new properties call for a minimum of 200 millimeters. And second, there must be a constructional hearth extending 500 millimeters from the front of the brickwork jambs and at least 150 millimeters wider at each side than the inside of the builder's opening. Right, we're ready to start fixing the fireplace. It's essential we have a level back hearth from which to begin the installation. It can either be cast in place or it can be precast. In this case, it's precast. It should be level in both directions, with its front edge 12 millimeters back from the front of the brickwork jambs to allow for an expansion joint. The height of this hearth is also critical. It must finish precisely level with the finished hearth, whether it's raised or flush. The next job is to place the fire back on the back hearth. A 2-piece fire back is preferable. It's lighter to handle and allows the hotter bottom half to expand at a different rate to the cooler top half, so reducing the tendency for cracking. To correctly position the fire back, you should first place the fire surround up to the chimney breast. In this case, blocks are used to simulate the finished hearth height. Once that's been done, you can centralize the fire back in the resulting opening and mark it, making sure to allow 12 millimeters of space between the two for the later application of fireproof rope seal. Next, mark the correct position of the fixing lugs for the fireplace in the chimney breast, and after first removing the fireplace, drill and plug the holes. It's probably worth mentioning before we go any further that either a domestic back boiler flue set to give hot water or a high-output back boiler for domestic hot water and central heating could be fitted instead of a plain fire back. Using a boiler flue set makes the installation of a domestic back boiler easy because the flueways, boiler and cradle are pre-formed, and once the unit is assembled and the pipes connected, final installation is the same as with a dry fire back. Right, back to the installation. With the fire back now positioned on the back hearth, The next step is to brick up the space between the front of the fire back and the inside of the builder's opening. What form this takes depends on the space, but it's basically a shuttering in operation to hold the infill and, in some cases, to support the throat-forming lintel. Once that's complete, a layer of corrugated cardboard is placed around the outside of the bottom section of the fire back to act as an expansion joint. You can then fill in behind the fire back with a mixture of 6 parts vermiculite, 1 part cement, remembering to use as little water as possible. Infill should finish flush with the top of the fire back. Tamp this mixture down very lightly and check the position of the fire back on the back hearth. Now, from the top of the fire back, build up a slope or gather using cut bricks and ideally a mixture of 8 parts sand, 1 part cement, 1 part lime. The slope should be no less than 45 degrees from the horizontal and should preferably measure 60 degrees. This slope ensures a smooth flow of gases and prevents cavities at the base of the flue. A good slogan to remember is "Avoid at void." As an alternative at this stage, it's possible to fit a cosy home ventilation regulator to help increase the efficiency of the fire. It works by allowing the ventilation rate of the room through the fireplace to be regulated. Normally, the regulator is wide open when lighting the fire, and it's progressively closed to its minimum setting as the fire becomes established. It's also closed to the minimum setting when the fire is unlit to prevent wasteful heat loss from the room, but at the same time it still allows for a healthy ventilation. Right. At this stage, a throat-forming lintel is fitted. If using a large lintel, its weight must be carried on the bricking up work we did earlier and not on the fire back. In this installation, a short lintel is used, which can rest on the fire back. The throat of the flue must be checked to make sure it's between 90 and 100 millimeters wide to allow for a sweep's brush. Once you've done that, you can brick up to the front of the opening above the lintel. With that job complete, the fireplace and hearth can now be fitted. Often the fireplace is fitted first and the hearth slid in afterwards. In this case, the fireplace sits on top of the hearth, so the hearth is fitted first. The front or superimposed hearth is bedded down on a mix of 8 parts sand, 1 part cement and 1 part lime. Some fireplaces have a flush hearth, in which case the finish can be laid down. But always remember, when fitting the hearth before the fireplace, the risk of damage to the hearth is greater, so be careful and protect it. The bedding down of the hearth takes place on a weak mortar mix, with all the weight carried on the constructional hearth and not on any continuation of any floorboarding which may be present. Now offer up the fireplace and secure it to the wall. If necessary, the joint between the fireplace and hearth can now be pointed with a suitable filler, and fireproof rope corked between the back of the fireplace opening, the front edge of the fireback and lintel, and also the space between the back and front hearths. Once that's been done, a very thin skin of fire cement can be applied to tidy up the joints. The joint between fireplace and chimney breast can now be made good. Right, we're now onto the home stretch, the fitting of the cosy home fire itself. Start by following the instructions in the pack, which basically tell you to secure the fixing lugs to the main frame. Next, offer it up into position. The fire grate should also be tried at this stage. Mark the securing holes in the back hearth. Then drill the holes in the back of the hearth and fit the metal expansion plugs. Once you've completed that fairly simple task, apply fire cement or heat-proof rope to the sides of the frame and fire cement to the underside of the frame. Now press the fire into position and screw it down to the hearth, making sure that a good airtight seal is made between the sides of the frame and the front edge of the fire back. Clean off any surplus fire cement. Any necessary plastering of the chimney breast can now be done. And as far as the installation itself is concerned, that's about it. It's advisable, however, to wait at least 24 hours before lighting a fire to allow drying to take place. Now is the time to fit any overmantel that's required, but note that wooden overmantels require the plaster to have dried first. They're normally fitted to the plaster with mirror plates. Now you can fit the fire parts, making sure to check they operate correctly. It's also important to check enough ventilation air is entering the room. If draft stripping has been applied or high-efficiency window and door seals have been fitted, it may be necessary to provide extra inlets, preferably from within the property, in order to stay in line with the current building regulations. Another example of the wide range of open fires which are available are the underfloor draft fires. If you choose any of these variations, contact either British Coal or the manufacturers for installation instructions. Correct installation is vital, and if you follow the rules given in this programme, that's exactly what you'll get. You'll also get high efficiency, safety, and a long life appliance. But most important of all, you'll get a satisfied customer.